The stars hung like distant lanterns in the void, their light traversing unfathomable distances to reach the gleaming metropolis of New Terra. The central hub of human civilization floated majestically in orbit around a terraformed world, its spiraling architecture capturing the essence of humanity's greatest achievement, peace. For 3 centuries, humans had known nothing but prosperity. The ancient wars that once plagued their history existed only in museum archives and academic texts. Weapon systems gathered dust in forgotten vaults beneath planetary surfaces. Military strategy became an abstract concept taught alongside other historical curiosities. On the observation deck of the Central Council Tower, Ambassador Elena Chen watched the stars with quiet appreciation. At 63, she had spent her entire career fostering diplomatic relations between the various human colonies spread across 17 star systems. Never once had she encountered a threat that couldn't be resolved through dialogue and compromise. Beautiful view, isn't it? The voice belonged to Council Chairman Marcus Reed, a tall man with silver hair and dark eyes that reflected the starlight. The universe at peace, Elena replied, smiling. Our greatest accomplishment. 300 years without major conflict, Marcus said, standing beside her. Our ancestors would be proud. Sometimes I wonder if we've forgotten something essential, Elena mused. 3 centuries of peace has changed us fundamentally. Marcus chuckled softly. Always the philosopher. What do you think we've forgotten? She turned to face him, her expression suddenly serious. Vigilance. The word hung between them, an uncomfortable disruption to their peaceful contemplation. Before Marcus could respond, his communication device chimed urgently. The message displayed caused his composed demeanor to falter momentarily. What is it? Elena asked, noticing the change. A signal, he replied, his voice tight. From the deep space monitoring station at the edge of the Helios sector. Something's coming. Neither of them could have known that this moment marked the end of humanity's golden age. Dr. Alexis Harrington had spent 15 years studying ancient human military technology at the Historical Archives Complex on Mars. Her specialty was the pre-peace era weaponry, specifically the legendary Titan warframes that had helped unify humanity before the Great Peace. Fascinating machines, she often told her board students. Each one stood 20 meters tall, powered by fusion cores, and operated by a neurally linked pilot. They were the pinnacle of combat technology before we chose diplomacy over war. Today, however, she wasn't addressing students. She stood instead before the Central Council, 50 representatives from all human colonies, assembled for an emergency session. The signal patterns are unmistakable, Alexis explained, gesturing to the holographic display that showed wave after wave of unidentified vessels, entering the outer solar systems of human space. These are warships. Their configuration doesn't match anything in our historical databases. You're certain they're hostile? Asked a counselor from Europa Colony. They've already destroyed 3 deep space monitoring stations without attempting communication, Alexis replied grimly. And they're moving in formation toward populated systems. Marcus Reed's voice cut through the murmurs that filled the chamber. What are our defensive capabilities? A heavy silence fell. For centuries, humanity had maintained only a small peacekeeping fleet, designed for natural disaster response and piracy deterrence. Nothing that could withstand a coordinated military assault. We've lived so long in peace that we've forgotten how to protect it, Elena said, echoing her earlier concerns. There may be an option, Alexis said carefully, knowing her next words would be controversial. Project Lazarus. The council erupted in objections. Project Lazarus was a contingency plan so secret that most believed it was merely theoretical. It involved reactivating the ancient military technologies that had been sealed away after the unification wars. The Titan warframes? Marcus asked, hushing the council with a raised hand. They've been dormant for centuries. Do they even function anymore? The preservation protocols were thorough, Alexis explained. And there's more. The Primus Legion. At this, even Marcus looked shocked. The Primus Legion was more than just historical footnote, they were legend. Elite soldiers who had undergone experimental procedures to enhance their combat capabilities. When peace was established, they had voluntarily entered cryogenic stasis, a final sacrifice to ensure they would never disrupt the peaceful society they had helped create. They chose to sleep rather than live in a world that no longer needed warriors, Elena said softly. To awaken them would be to admit that our peace has failed. If we don't, Alexis countered, there may not be any humans left to maintain that peace. The debate raged for hours, but as reports came in of outer colonies going silent, one by one the decision became inevitable. Project Lazarus would be activated. Humanity would remember how to fight. The Lazarus complex was buried 2 kilometers beneath the Martian surface, a vast underground facility that had remained sealed since the declaration of the Great Peace. As the security doors parted for the first time in centuries, Dr. Alexis Harrington felt a profound sense of trepidation. Behind her stood Marcus, Elena, and a small team of scientists and technicians chosen for their expertise in historical technology. The air that rushed out to meet them was perfectly preserved, maintained by ancient systems that had continued to function flawlessly. "Hard to believe this has been here all along," Marcus whispered as they entered a massive hangar. Before them stood rows of Titan warframes, each one a monument to humanity's past military might. They were humanoid in basic shape but distinctly mechanical, their metal surfaces etched with battle scars and unit designations. Each one unique, each one a weapon of terrifying power. 57 warframes, Alexis said, consulting her datapad. Most of them Mark IV or Mark V models, the most advanced ever created. "And their pilots?" Elena asked. Alexis gestured toward a series of doors at the far end of the hangar. "The Primus Legion sleeps beyond those doors. 120 elite soldiers, each one neurally compatible with the warframes." Marcus approached the nearest Titan, placing his hand against its massive foot. The metal was cold but thrummed with latent energy. "How quickly can they be activated?" "The warframes could be operational within 48 hours, Alexis replied. "But awakening the Legion will take longer. Their bodies have been preserved, but their minds. Reintegration after 3 centuries of suspended animation is unprecedented." "We don't have a choice," Elena said firmly. "The Apocryphon Dominion has already taken 4 outer colonies. Their ships will reach New Terra within 2 weeks." Alexis nodded grimly and activated her communication device. "Begin awakening protocols for the Primus Legion. All units." As her team dispersed to their assigned stations, Alexis approached the central computer terminal. The interface was archaic by current standards, but she had studied it extensively. With careful precision, she input the activation codes. Around them, the facility hummed to life. Lights flickered on across the hangar floor, illuminating the Titans in their full, awesome presence. Diagnostic systems began running checks on each warframe, their status displaying on monitors throughout the complex. "Now we wait," Alexis said, turning to face the others, "and hope that our ancestors left us the means to survive." Commander James Reeves opened his eyes to a world he no longer recognized. The cryogenic revival process had been disorienting, his mind struggling to process the fact that centuries had passed since he voluntarily entered stasis. "Easy, Commander," a gentle voice advised. "Your neuromuscular system is still recalibrating." Blinking away the blurriness, James focused on the face above him, a woman with short dark hair and concerned eyes. "Dr. Alexis Harrington," she introduced herself. "Historical Military Technology Division." "Historical?" James repeated, his voice rough from disuse. The word stung more than it should have. "I apologize," she said quickly. "That was insensitive." With effort, James sat up on the medical bed. His body felt simultaneously heavy and weightless, an effect of the revival drugs coursing through his system. Around him, other members of the Primus Legion were in various stages of awakening, attended by medical staff. "Why have we been awakened?" he asked, though part of him already knew the answer. The Primus Legion would only be revived if humanity faced extinction. "Dr. Harrington's expression grew grim. "We're under attack by an alien force called the Apocryphon Dominion. They've already destroyed several colonies. Our peacekeeping forces are inadequate." James nodded slowly, processing this information. "The warframes?" "Intact and being prepared for deployment." A flicker of something like purpose sparked in James's eyes. He had entered stasis believing his skills would never again be needed, a sacrifice made willingly for the peaceful future he had helped secure. Now, paradoxically, he felt a sense of validation. The warrior was needed once more. "How long do we have?" "The enemy will reach New Terra in approximately 10 days, Alexis replied. "We need the Legion ready before then." James swung his legs over the edge of the bed, testing his strength. "Then we have work to do." Over the next 72 hours, the Primus Legion underwent intensive rehabilitation. Their bodies, preserved in peak physical condition, but weakened by centuries of inactivity, required carefully calibrated exercise regimens and neural stimulation to restore full functionality. James pushed himself and his soldiers relentlessly. They trained in simulated combat environments, reacquainting themselves with tactics and strategies that had been forgotten by peaceful generations. Most importantly, they reconnected with their warframes, the neural links between pilot and machine growing stronger with each synchronization session. On the fourth day after awakening, James stood before his warframe, designation Prometheus. The towering machine had been his partner through countless battles during the Unification Wars. Its scarred metal exterior told the story of their shared history. "Hello, old friend," he murmured, placing his hand against the cool metal of the Titan's foot. "Time to wake up." The first battle came sooner than expected. The Apocryphon Dominion, detecting unusual energy signatures from the Lazarus complex, diverted a scout fleet to investigate. 7 alien vessels entered Mars orbital space, their sleek, organic-looking designs unlike anything in human records. "They're scanning the surface," reported a technician from the hastily established command center. "Concentrated on this region." James, now fully recovered and dressed in his commander's uniform, studied the tactical display. "How many warframes are combat-ready?" 15, Alexis replied. "Including yours. The rest need at least another 48 hours. James nodded decisively. "Then we deploy with 15. Better to engage them here than allow them to report back to their main fleet." Within the hour, 15 Titan warframes stood in the massive launch bay of the Lazarus complex. Each pilot, connected to their machine through neural interfaces at the base of the skull, felt the familiar rush of expanded consciousness as human and machine became one entity. James, synchronized with Prometheus, addressed his soldiers through the warframe's communication system. "This is not a battle we chose, but it is one we must win. Humanity has forgotten how to fight, but we have not. Show these invaders what it means to threaten the human race." The launch sequence initiated, massive doors sliding open above them to reveal the Martian sky. One by one, the Titans activated their propulsion systems, launching upward with a thunderous roar that shook the complex to its foundations. As they broke atmosphere, James felt a surge of exhilaration that he hadn't experienced in centuries. Prometheus responded to his thoughts with perfect precision, weapon systems coming online as they approached the alien vessels. "Spread out, attack pattern Delta," James commanded. "Target their propulsion systems first." The warframes moved with deadly grace, their massive forms belying incredible speed and agility. The alien vessels, seemingly surprised by the nature of humanity's response, scrambled to defensive positions. The battle that followed was brief but intense. The Apocryphon ships fired energy weapons that scorched the Martian atmosphere, but the Titans were faster than they appeared. Dodging and weaving between blasts, they closed distance rapidly. James guided Prometheus directly toward the largest enemy vessel. The warframe's fusion-powered fist punched through the alien hull with devastating force, tearing open a gaping wound in the organic-looking material. Secondary weapons deployed from the Titan's shoulders, firing precision rounds into the ship's exposed interior. Across the battlefield, the other warframes engaged with similar effectiveness. Lieutenant Maya Kwan, piloting the warframe Athena, deployed an electromagnetic pulse that disabled 2 enemy vessels simultaneously. Sergeant Darius Wells and Hephaestus utilized the Titan's thermal lance to slice through an alien ship from bow to stern. Within 20 minutes, 6 of the 7 Apocryphon vessels had been destroyed or disabled. The last, heavily damaged, attempted to retreat. "Don't let it escape," James ordered. "No intelligence about our capabilities can reach their main fleet." 3 warframes converged on the fleeing ship, their combined firepower reducing it to debris that rained down on the Martian surface in glowing fragments. As they returned to the Lazarus complex, a strange silence fell over the communication channel. Finally, Lieutenant Kwan spoke what they were all feeling. "They didn't expect us to fight back," she said. "Not like this." "No," James agreed. "But this was just a scouting party. The real test is still coming." News of the Mars victory spread rapidly through human colonies, igniting a spark of hope that had been dimming since the invasion began. On New Terra, the Central Council convened to reassess their strategy. "The Primus Legion has proven effective," Marcus announced to the assembled representatives. "But 7 scout ships are nothing compared to the Dominion's main fleet. We need more than 15 warframes." Alina, who had been coordinating civilian evacuation efforts, stepped forward. "There's another option we haven't considered. The historical archives mention additional military installations similar to the Lazarus complex. Facilities on Europa, Titan, and in the asteroid belt. Most of those records were sealed or redacted after the Great Peace," objected a counselor from the Prussian colony. "Not all of them," Alexis interjected via holographic projection from Mars. "Commander Reeves has provided access codes to previously restricted archives. There are indeed other facilities, and they may contain more warframes and possibly even members of the Legion who chose different stasis locations." The Council debated briefly before authorizing expedition teams to investigate these forgotten installations. Meanwhile, the Primus Legion continued preparing for the inevitable confrontation with the main Dominion fleet. On Mars, James reviewed tactical data with his officers. The information gathered from the destroyed alien vessels had provided valuable insights into Apocryphon technology and tactics. Their ships appear partially organic, he explained, indicating the analysis displayed on the command center's main screen. They're vulnerable to precise strikes at these junction points, and their energy weapons, while powerful, require a 3-second recharge between firings. A weakness we can exploit, Lieutenant Kwan noted. Exactly, James agreed, but we're still outnumbered significantly. The main fleet consists of at least 200 vessels, including 3 that appear to be command ships, each measuring roughly 3 kilometers in length. Sergeant Wells frowned at the display. Even with all warframes operational, we can't engage that many simultaneously. We won't have to, James replied, his expression thoughtful. Not if we strike first, on our terms. Over the next 5 days, as expedition teams reported success in locating and activating additional military installations, James developed a bold strategy. Rather than waiting for the Dominion fleet to reach New Terra, the combined human forces would intercept them near Saturn's rings, using the debris field for tactical advantage. By the 9th day after the Primus Legion's awakening, humanity had assembled a force of 89 operational warframes and 17 retrofitted peacekeeping vessels. It wasn't enough to match the Dominion's numbers, but it was enough to execute James's plan. As the human fleet departed for the Saturn intercept point, Elena Chen addressed the pilots from New Terra. Her message was broadcast to all ships and warframes. 3 centuries ago, your generation made the ultimate sacrifice. You chose to sleep so that we might live in peace. That peace has been threatened, and now you fight again, not just for those of us alive today, but for all future generations of humanity. You remind us that peace is not merely the absence of conflict, but something that must be actively protected. In the command ship leading the fleet, James listened to her words with mixed emotions. Part of him had always believed that the Primus Legion would be forgotten, a relic of a violent past best left buried. Instead, they had become humanity's last best hope. We won't fail, he promised quietly, though Elena couldn't hear him. Not this time. The Saturnian rings glowed with reflected sunlight, billions of ice particles and rock fragments, creating a natural wonder that had captivated humans since they first gazed at the night sky. Now these same rings would serve as the backdrop for humanity's greatest battle. The human fleet took position within the densest part of the ring system, the warframes anchoring themselves to larger fragments while the support vessels powered down to minimal signatures. Then they waited. Enemy fleet detected, announced the tactical officer on the command ship. 83 minutes until they reach our position. James, already synchronized with Prometheus, felt the familiar calm that always preceded combat. All units maintain position. Remember the plan. We strike only on my command. As the massive Dominion fleet approached, their formation became visible through the gaps in Saturn's rings. The alien vessels moved with eerie coordination, hundreds of smaller ships surrounding the 3 enormous command vessels. They're scanning the rings, reported Lieutenant Kwan from her position on the far side of the formation. But the ice and mineral content is interfering with their sensors. Good, fine, James replied. Hold steady. The alien fleet entered the outer edge of the ring system, their formation spreading out to navigate the debris field. They were searching for New Terra, unaware that the hunters had become the hunted. When the command ships reached the designated trigger point, James gave the order. All units execute attack plan Prometheus. Now, instantly the hidden warframes ignited their propulsion systems, launching from their concealed positions among the ice and rock. The Titans converged on the surprised alien fleet from all directions, targeting the vessels at the formation's periphery first. The battle erupted with furious intensity. Warframes tore through the outer defensive screen of Dominion ships, their specialized weapons proving devastatingly effective against the organic-mechanical hybrid vessels. Support ships emerged from hiding to provide covering fire, targeting the aliens' propulsion and weapon systems. James guided Prometheus directly toward the nearest command ship, a behemoth that dwarfed even the Titan warframes. Strike teams Alpha through Delta converge on my position. We're going inside. 4 additional warframes formed up alongside Prometheus, creating a wedge formation as they accelerated toward the command vessel's hull. Enemy fire intensified around them, energy beams slicing through the void. Evasive maneuvers, James ordered. Prometheus banking sharply to avoid a direct hit. Stay on target. The strike team reached the command ship's outer hull, magnetic grapples deploying to secure their position. Using specialized cutting tools, they began creating an entry point large enough for the warframes to pass through. "Hull breach achieved," reported Sergeant Wells, his warframe Hephaestus leading the cutting operation. "We're through." One by one, the 5 warframes entered the alien vessel, finding themselves in a cavernous space filled with organic-looking technology. Strange, pulsating light illuminated corridors that seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting rhythmically. "Sensors detecting massive energy source 2 kilometers inward," Lieutenant Kwan reported. "Likely the main reactor." "That's our target," James confirmed. "Stay alert. We don't know what internal defenses they have." The answer came swiftly. From recessed chambers along the corridors, armored figures emerged. Unlike the ships, these were clearly biological entities, though encased in technology that augmented their naturally imposing forms. Standing 3 meters tall, with multiple limbs ending in energy weapons, the Apocryphon warriors moved with surprising speed. "Engage at will," James ordered as the aliens opened fire. The interior of the command ship became a chaotic battleground. The warframes, designed primarily for external space combat, adapted to the confined space with remarkable agility. Their pilots, connected directly to the machine's nervous systems, executed combat maneuvers that would have been impossible for conventional vehicles. James drove Prometheus forward, the warframe's armored fists crushing alien defenders as they pressed toward the energy core. Lieutenant Kwan's Athena deployed short-range EMP bursts that temporarily disabled the enemy's energy weapons, creating openings for the other warframes to exploit. "Commander, we're being flanked," warned Sergeant Wells as a new group of defenders approached from a side corridor. "Hold position," James replied, making a split-second decision. Maya, Darius continued to the core. "The rest of us will handle this and follow." The battle split, with 2 warframes continuing toward the ship's heart, while James and the others engaged the reinforcements. The fighting was intense, damage indicators flashing across James's neural interface as Prometheus absorbed hit after hit. "Core reached," Lieutenant Kwan reported several minutes later. "Setting charges now." "Good," James acknowledged. Prometheus grappling with 2 alien defenders simultaneously. "We'll be there shortly." With methodical precision, Kwan and Wells planted the specialized fusion bombs around the command ship's power core. The devices, designed to trigger a catastrophic chain reaction, would destroy the vessel from within. "Charges set," Wells confirmed. 15 minutes until detonation. "All units begin withdrawal," James ordered, disengaging from combat and retreating toward the extraction point. "Move quickly." The 5 warframes fought their way back through the alien vessel, taking additional damage but maintaining operational status. As they emerged from the hull breach, the space battle outside had evolved significantly. Nearly half the Dominion fleet had been destroyed or disabled, but human losses were mounting as well. "All strike teams, clear the command vessels," James broadcast to the entire fleet. "Detonation in 8 minutes." Across the battlefield, similar scenes were playing out. 2 other strike teams had successfully infiltrated the remaining command ships, placing identical charges on their power cores. The synchronized attack had caught the Apocryphon Dominion completely unprepared. "All warframes form up at Rally Point Omega," James commanded as they pushed away from the doomed command ship. "Prepare for shockwave." The human forces disengaged, withdrawing to a safe distance among Saturn's rings. Behind them, the 3 massive command vessels began to show signs of internal destruction, their hulls bulging outward as the chain reactions built toward critical mass. When the detonations came, they were spectacular. Each command ship exploded from within, the blasts, tearing through their structures and creating shock waves that rippled outward, catching many of the smaller Dominion vessels in their path. In the command ship's tactical center, the human officers watched in awe as the enemy fleet was decimated. Without their command vessels, the remaining Apocryphon ships lost coordination, their movements becoming erratic and disorganized. "Press the advantage," James ordered. "All units re-engage." The warframes surged forward once more, targeting the confused enemy vessels with precision strikes. What had begun as a desperate last stand transformed into a rout, with the remaining Dominion ships attempting to retreat in disarray. "Shall we pursue?" asked Lieutenant Kwan. James considered this briefly before responding. "No. Let a few escape. Let them carry word back to their civilization about what happened here. Let them tell others what awaits any who threaten humanity." As the last enemy ships fled the Saturn system, cheers erupted across the human fleet. It wasn't just a victory, it was redemption for the Primus Legion. Validation that their sacrifice 3 centuries ago had not been in vain. In Prometheus's cockpit, James finally allowed himself to relax, the neural connection between man and machine easing as combat systems powered down. Looking out at Saturn's majestic rings, now littered with the debris of battle, he felt not triumph but resolve. Humanity had forgotten how to fight. Now they would remember, not to conquer or dominate, but to preserve the peace they had built. This was the true legacy of the Primus Legion. 1 month after the Battle of Saturn, New Terra gleamed in the starlight, its structures unscathed by the conflict that had threatened to destroy it. In the Central Council chamber, representatives from all human colonies gathered for a historic session. James Reeves, now wearing a formal dress uniform rather than his neural combat gear, stood before them. Behind him, a delegation of the Primus Legion formed an honor guard, their presence a physical reminder of humanity's reawakened strength. The Apocryphon Dominion has withdrawn from human space, James reported. Our long-range scouts confirmed they've abandoned the colonies they initially occupied. We've begun re-establishment efforts in those systems. Marcus Reed, still serving as council chairman, nodded appreciatively. And what of the Dominion itself? Will they return? Perhaps, or James acknowledged, but not soon and not without considerable caution. We've demonstrated that humanity is not the easy target they assumed. Elena Chen, who had coordinated the civilian aspects of the war effort, stepped forward. The question before us now is what comes next. Do we return to our previous state, sealing away the warframes and sending the Primus Legion back into stasis? A thoughtful silence fell over the chamber. It was a fundamental question about humanity's future, about balancing peace with necessary vigilance. If I may, James said carefully, 3 centuries ago we made a mistake. Not in choosing peace that was right and necessary, but in forgetting that peace must be actively protected. We sealed away not just weapons, but knowledge. We allowed ourselves to become vulnerable. He gestured to his soldiers standing at attention behind him. The Primus Legion doesn't wish to disrupt the society you've built. We fought so that it could exist, but perhaps there's a middle path, one where we maintain readiness without militarizing our culture. The council debated long into the night, with representatives from all colonies offering perspectives. By morning, a consensus had emerged. The warframes would not be sealed away again, but maintained in a state of readiness. The Primus Legion would establish training programs for a new generation of defenders, ensuring the knowledge wasn't lost again. Most importantly, humanity would remember the lesson learned at such great cost that peace was not the absence of strength, but its most noble application. 2 days later, James stood on the observation deck where Elena had once contemplated the stars. The view was unchanged, distant suns still shining against the void, but his perspective had shifted profoundly. Beautiful, isn't it? Elena said, joining him at the viewport. Worth protecting, he replied quietly. You know, she said after a moment, I used to wonder what we had forgotten during our centuries of peace. Now I understand it wasn't just vigilance, but balance. The wisdom to know when to extend a hand in friendship and when to form a fist in defense. James nodded, watching a transport ship depart for one of the reclaimed colonies. My generation fought for unification, then stepped aside so peace could flourish. Your generation preserved that peace, creating something remarkable. Now perhaps our generations can learn from each other. A synthesis of strength and compassion, Elena agreed. As they stood in companionable silence, the stars seemed to burn a little brighter, illuminating a path forward for humanity. Not a return to the warlike past, nor a naive pacifism, but something new, a civilization that remembered its strength while cherishing its highest ideals. The legacy of the Primus Legion would not be written in battle alone, but in the peace they had twice secured, first by sleeping, then by awakening. And in that awakening, humanity itself had been reborn.